Does the punishment fit the crime? I'm Joel D. Smith. This is 21 Next. Let's bring in Maxine Rose. Interesting discussion here. They're talking about child predators and what kind of punishment should be coming their way. And a couple Republican lawmakers in Pennsylvania have an innovative idea. It's in some other places. Let's talk about it. Maxine Rose, talking child predators. What is the proposal? What kind of punishments are we talking about here?
So specifically, we're talking about castration. So when I spoke with the Republican state leaders who are proposing this, the focus really is on chemical castration for offenders, sex offenders, specifically, child sex offenders. To talk a little bit about all of the details of this, I reached out to them today, and I learned a little bit about not only what this really meant, what this looked like, but what's the long-term effects and how does it affect this community.
Okay, so let's go piece by piece here. Let's say it's an addiction, pedophilia, and some believe it is an addiction. Is there a cure?
So there is no cure to pedophilia. But that is the question that I ask a lot of people today. Do you believe, despite this being a scientific term, do you believe that this is a choice, or is this a disease? A disease? Yeah, exactly. And so I also wanted to ask State Rep Marla Brown that today. She's the one who's spearheading all of this, to kind of get an idea if that led to this decision at all to really come up with this legislation. She says, I believe it's both. I believe it's a choice and it's a disease, and we need to be able to get ahead of those urges. So that's what this would do.
Okay, so this would require the guilty to take these shots, which would basically be a medical form of castration. Did you look into what it does to the body?
Yes. So she actually described to me, now she's not a physician, and this is in its very early stages at this point, but from what we understand, this would reduce libido. So this would reduce that urge to really act on those.
So we call it a medical castration. Yeah. It's simply reducing the libido to a really low level to where they wouldn't have those urges because of the medication preventing it?
Yes. I mean, if we had to narrow it down, yes, that is essentially it.
Okay. Yeah. So I think people hear castration, they think of the medical procedure to actually, go into the body and make changes.
Yes, that is the goal of it, and also long term. I asked her today, Joel D., on this memo that was released yesterday, it says surgical and chemical castration. And I asked her, we're talking a lot about chemical castration here. Why are we not talking about surgical? And I think really bottom line from her answer is that chemical castration can still be permanent long term. I think, as we spoke about earlier, Joel D., there are other places that are doing this, and there is that option to do surgical castration.
Right. So I'll talk about California. I did a little research on that. So they have this already in California, Louisiana, and Florida. 11 jurisdictions across the country, and those are the 3 states where it's in. In California, they do the medical procedure. I'm sorry, they do the medicine, the medical part of this, where it's a prescription or whatever you have, it's shots that brings the libido down, and that's ongoing. But they give the option to the guilty to have the medical procedure.
Right.
Now let's step back. It seems like, why would someone choose this? Well, if we accept, and many in the medical field do, that pedophilia is a disease and it's incurable, these people, some of them don't want to have the option to commit these crimes again. They'll do anything to stop that. And they don't believe they can stop unless they have some help in this form, because it's an addiction and a disease. And so they choose to have a medical procedure, which will prevent them to be able to have those urges and act on them. And so it's interesting that has been even chosen by some people. That shows you how, for some, addictive and excruciating this is for them. Just wanted to lay that out there. It seems like that option is not part of this particular bill that we're talking about, Pennsylvania, right?
Right. And to circle back there, I mean, at this point, that's not something that they were talking about. But as I said before, this is in its early stages,
Yeah.
and conversations are being had.
Yeah. So, I mean, it takes a while to get through this stuff. You start with the memo, you try to build up a consensus, it goes through committees before it gets towards the voting. So we're in the early stages of this right now. What's the feel? Like, is there going to be any movement on this, or is this just someone throwing out the idea so we start talking about it?
Well, from what Representative Brown said, is really there hasn't been much press on this just yet. So for us to do the story today and really get this conversation out there could help kind of create some productive engagement, interest in this. So we'll see what happens next. But I think the next step is to get Democratic leaders on this as well. Representative Brown says, I think there is that belief that this is obviously not right. Like sexual predators, it's not a good thing. And so there should be some sort of consequence there.
Well, so maybe it's a deterrent as well, right?
Yeah.
Where if this gets known in Pennsylvania, if you do this, here's the consequences.
Right.
A lot of times punishments are supposed to be deterrents. Know that you will get in big trouble if you do X. And so this would be a big deterrent for some. It's not all, obviously. And if it is an addiction, there's only so much deterrent you can do. But this would be out there, and you would hope it would deter some from taking those steps that hurt kids, obviously, in so many ways. And we don't want to, talk about any leniency here, but some would probably think this is over the top when it comes to the kind of punishment. Does the punishment really fit the crime? Yeah, the horrible thing happened, but should you do something this extreme to the person who did? And that's why it's a good argument, one way or the other.
Right. Well, and I think too, there are so many people who are saying, especially what I heard today here in Harrisburg is, well, this feels really, really extreme. But I think part of this too, and what we were just talking about, this is also a treatment. So it's not only this punishment, this consequence, it's also supposedly supposed to be a sort of treatment for this. But I want to talk about one thing here, Joel D, and it was just about how it could affect the judicial system and actually, the imprisonment of these people. So how this would work is that a judge would decide this. This would be court mandated, but a convicted felon, a sex offender, could choose to go this route in order to reduce their sentence.
I see. Did they get into how often they'd have to have the shots and ongoing?
I did ask that. They said that it would happen, but I think within the last 5 days of their sentence. So as they're on their way out, they would get a dose. And from what it sounds like, that dose would be enough. Because I asked, how do you stay on top of something like this, right? If there are multiple doses, there's a probation period typically afterward.
Right.
But how do you ensure?
How long does the dose last? I mean, do they have to go back in 6 months, three weeks?
Right. That's what I was asking. And it seems that there's not really an answer for that. From what it sounds like, it's just that one dose, as they're on their way out of prison. But of course.
Yeah, that's a detail. And a lot of times when you're starting this process, that's what gets worked out, right? I mean, the medical community would say, this is what works for how long. And so you'd have to come back. A lot of times, you have your folks that are on parole anyway.
Yeah.
They have to check in with their caseworkers. So, I mean, this would be something similar. You have to come in and get the shot. If you don't show up, you go back to jail. So, I mean, that seems like the way to go on that as well.
Yeah.
Did we lose Maxine? No, she's still here. Yeah. So we'll see where this goes from here. Like we said, there is precedent. There's other states that do this.
Yeah.
What I'd be curious about is I would want to hear from the parents of kids who were sexually abused. Mm-hmm. How do they feel? Are they behind this? And I think that is the kind of thing that could push this forward from just an idea into getting more support to get it towards a vote and potential implementation. Final thought on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it would be also interesting to talk about what their response to chemical castration versus surgical castration, because those are really two different extremes, I would say.
Yeah.
I mean, they're saying they're saying that the chemical castration could still be long term, but I'd also wonder, is there another level to all of this? And what do people who've been affected
It's
by this?
interesting. When you always say punishment fit the crime, this is about as close as it gets. I mean, you know, it's interesting, and it's not completely out of the ordinary because once again, 3 other states have it. So thanks for bringing this to our attention. We'll see where it goes from here. We'll see you on the news talking about it too. Maxine Rose. All right, folks, I know you have thoughts on this, so share them with us. We'll probably get a couple on the air today as well. Is this too extreme? Is this just about right? Is this a nice deterrent out there for folks before they take any action on their urges if they have pedophilia as a disease, if you really view it as a disease or not? So a lot of things that you can comment on, and there is the story on our website right now. I'm Joel D. Smith. This is 21 Next. Enjoy the rest of your day.